Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just getting my settings set up. You should be able to ask questions in the Q&A. You should be able to chat a message. If for whatever reason you cannot see the slide, the title slide, how to turn a complicated breakup into a win-win divorce with mediation, then let us know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to get started. So first of all, I just want to welcome you. I know it wasn't easy to make time to attend today. I know you had so many other competing needs and tasks and all of that good stuff. And I know this is probably not your favorite topic, divorce. So I really appreciate you being here. And I really hope that I can add value, that you feel like you come out of this webinar with an action plan, a real clear understanding of the divorce process, how mediation works, tips for getting your spouse on board if they're hesitant, or maybe you haven't even talked about divorce with them yet, and then how to be successful in your divorce, not just survive. So I think so often we talk about divorce on media and in culture, popular culture, of being this long, messy, awful, terrible ordeal. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I don't want it to be like that for you either. So my goal is really to help you understand how we can move through the process, not without some conflict and some pain, but also with a sense of empowerment, control, reduce some of that overwhelm, and really get you set up for that next best chapter. So why should you be listening to me? Well, let me tell you a little bit about my background. That might give you a little bit more familiarity with who I am, what motivates me, why I'm here talking to you today. So first of all, I am a mom. I am also a lawyer. I've been practicing law since 2005. And in 2009, I opened my own law firm, Levine Family Law Group. And I scaled it way up for many years and then scaled it way back so that I could launch Hello Divorce. And the reason is because I felt like a complicit participant in this system that really routes people through war. And I no longer wanted to be that person. I really wanted to return to my roots, my values, which is that a zero-sum game, one person winning and the other person losing, is bad for us. It's toxic for our family, for our communities. I wanted to find a way, and I will share that way with you today, where we could do divorce and keep costs down, have it be much friendlier, easier, and again, really set ourselves up for a much better next chapter. So that's me in a nutshell. I also love Etsy, independent shopping, a small business. I love meditating, but I'm not that good at it, and I often get distracted. And I really am all about, and you'll hear this and you'll see this in our emails and our website, in the way that our account coordinators, lawyers, and mediators talk to you, and even across our social media, that we want to change the conversation around divorce. So much of life changes, big life experiences, we're surrounded by community. So weddings and childbirth and even death, funerals. But with divorce, we often are doing it so alone and in this and feel quite isolated. So our job is to help you feel connected to your community. We want to change the conversation around divorce, replace that stigma and overwhelm that you feel from all different areas and walks of life with peace of mind. And a great way to get there is with education and self-growth techniques, which is not entirely the subject of today's webinar, but I do think that you'll maybe free up some headspace to be able to feel like you're in more control and you have more time to take care of you. So divorce does differ from state to state. There's no question about that. And that's why we've been very deliberate and thoughtful about launching into each state that we go into. But in general, the way that we have broken up divorce is into 3 main steps. The first step is almost always with what some states call a petition, other states call a complaint or a summons. It's that first document that says to the court, to your spouse, and that you are embarking on this divorce process, that you want to reserve all rights that you may be entitled to, and that you, in some cases, want to get that waiting period started. So in many states, there's a waiting period. You might have heard of this before. That waiting period can be 90 days, like Colorado, 6 months, like California. But the bottom line is, even if you come to a complete agreement and we get all of your paperwork into the court, you cannot be officially divorced until that waiting period has lapsed. So we get you started on that first document for a couple of reasons. One is to get that waiting period started. The other is because we want you to have some success along the way. This is really stressful, and we don't want to have you do everything at once. If you're doing it in steps, you're building trust with your spouse, you're building confidence, and you're giving yourself the time that you need to ultimately come to an agreement. Because for most of us, it doesn't happen overnight. It's something that we need to work towards. So the second step is disclosing your financials. And some of you have a complete open book. Some of you have a spouse who's been more controlling, or maybe you have. Maybe it's not even bad. Maybe it's just that one of you felt more comfortable with the finances. Whatever it might be, the second step in our process is to get all of your financials out on the table. And one thing that we really try to do here is have you disclose them through our questionnaire, which is in plain English. You don't see any of the legalese or jargon until after you submit this stuff. But we have you do it through a questionnaire so that, number one, you're getting everything on the table. You're not having to think through what it is do I need to disclose. Instead, you're sort of led through it, but also so that your forms populate and you've now completed step 2. So the final agreement, which is the final part of your divorce, which is what most people talk about and is probably the most challenging, is getting to that final agreement. There's several ways to do it. You can work directly with your spouse. You can use a mediator, which we'll be talking about today. In some cases, you might lawyer up and your lawyers might talk it through. In some cases, you can't come to an agreement at all and you have to go to court to get some help. But I will say that all of you and your spouses can agree to at least one thing. It's very rare that everything is up in the air and you need the court to help you make that final decision. So that's a very high level introduction to the divorce timeline, but hopefully it's helpful to get you to understand that there is procedure and there is substance. Procedure are all the forms that have to get done. We help you, we make that super easy on you. And then there's the substance, coming to an agreement on things like child support or property division, or how will debts be divided. And that's another piece that we can help you with as well. So you'll see a link here. You can search it on Hello Divorce. We also will send you the slides with this link. But if you haven't already, we have a Divorce 101 downloadable, fillable book that is going to set you up and get you really prepared for your divorce. So just a little plug there. If you haven't downloaded it yet, it's free and it's really going to help you get focused on what you need to accomplish to get your divorce done. So what you're looking at now is a screen of somebody on our Divorce Navigator. Regardless of the level of service or technology that you choose with Hello Divorce, or maybe even on your own with another team or lawyer, I still want you to know that you have absolute access to our worksheets, our downloads. Education is going to be so important here, right? Because I find, and a lot of our clients find, that period of time in which one of you or both of you have decided that you want a divorce, through that period of time of actually getting to agreement, is probably the most overwhelming piece because so much is happening. You have all your normal responsibilities, plus you're trying to ensure that your kids are okay. Plus you're trying to take care of you. And sometimes that means establishing all these new rituals, like who gets coffee in the morning and when you get to take a walk. Plus you have that divorce to think about because you want to move through it and get it done. So if you're looking for a particular resource, you can type it into chat and one of my co-founders can jump on and send you a link, or we can do so after in an email. So don't be shy there. You're always welcome to use the chat bot on the site too. If there's something you're looking for, you haven't been able to find, we probably have it. And if we don't, it's probably something that we need to create. So we would love your feedback. So how do you divorce, right? Like now you understand these 3 steps and you, Karen, I see your question about pets and we'll definitely get to that probably after my slides, but remind me, I will absolutely address that. So how to divorce? There are several ways to do it. In the past, there were 2 ways, either lawyer up and fight or do it yourself. And I really found that problematic because you are dissolving a pretty complicated contract, your marital contract. And so I felt that the DIY piece was not enough support for most people, but the lawyer up was problematic in so many ways because the way to resolve conflict when you lawyer up is often through court, which brings a lot of uncertainty, a lot of expense. And most people are concerned that if they lawyer up in that traditional sense, that's going to send their spouse the wrong message. And it can end up being more of a fight than it has to be. And then the other issue I had with just lawyering up in that traditional way is that most lawyers have not yet embraced technology in a way that's meaningful, that's really going to make your divorce easier. And they do it in a couple, in some ways, it's like just on us lawyers. It's something that we weren't trained on and that we haven't fully embraced. In some ways, the legal regulations have made it really, really tricky for lawyers to embrace technology in a way that's going to be ethical, that's going to meet legal regulations, and also going to meet your needs. That's something that I've dedicated my life to. So the technology that we provide, the goal is to be as helpful as possible, but also to ensure that you are getting what you need and it's legal. So do it yourself. You can do it on your own. You can go to the court website and they do have the forms and that is a possibility. Or you can use our do-it-yourself web app, which is going to lead you through each of the steps, help you with the software, lead you through all the questions that you need to answer to get your forms done and all the procedural steps. Because every state is different and sometimes every county is different too, which is incredibly frustrating. So, for example, some courts have a local form. Some courts call a form optional, but it's really not optional. Some courts want an e-signature, some don't. So that procedural stuff, we do our absolute best with our DIY program to provide you the information you need to be successful at that. But we do offer DIY Pro if you want help handling all of that procedural stuff. So if you're comfortable filling out some questionnaires, having your forms populate, you can make revisions to them, you can share them with your spouse if you're comfortable with that, but you really want someone to sort of take over and manage and coordinate your divorce, meaning get the forms filed, activate the waiting period, correspond directly with the court if they're asking for more information, that kind of thing. Then you're going to want to choose a plan that's higher than DIY. That would be DIY Pro. Or we have a couple other options. One is divorce with benefits, which includes 2 hours with a lawyer who can review your paperwork, or a lawyer mediator. So they can work with one of you or both of you to review your forms, to talk through an agreement, and help really check your forms, make sure everything is in order, give you the resources that you need, that kind of thing. So if you want a more handheld approach. And then cooperative divorce, what we're talking about today, is one more way that we can help. And this is where we are guiding you through the entire divorce process, start to finish, including 5 hours of mediation that you can use however you want, although we have a system for it, and I'm going to talk to you about that. But essentially, it's saying, hey, I'm dedicated to working through this divorce, but I don't want to really have to think about it until it's time for me to fill out a questionnaire or go to mediation. And all of our sessions are online, so it's a lot easier just to be able to hand something over to someone and say, hey, you got me, great. And then the last option, which we don't offer at Hello Divorce, is just lawyering up, is saying, you know what, I want to hire a lawyer. I want, not for coaching, like with our divorce with benefits plan or our mediation plan, but I want someone to represent me all the way through, which is going to be a good option for you if there is violence in your relationship, if you're feeling unsafe, if your spouse, you are convinced that there is nothing you can do or say to get your spouse to be open and transparent about finances, or if you're just feeling really overwhelmed and you want someone to advocate on your behalf. But let's get into like the real crux of what we're here today. We had someone ask whether or not both a lawyer, you can both talk to a lawyer and then a mediator. And the answer is yes. I generally suggest that you start with a mediator. That mediator is going to help talk through all of the issues that can come up, all of the areas that you need to come to an agreement on. And if you find that you're at the point where before you agree to anything, you want to talk to your own consulting lawyer, that's fine. And I really encourage you not to panic if your spouse talks to a lawyer. Because sometimes it's just understanding their best or worst case scenario. Sometimes it's just getting that stamp of approval that, hey, we're working on on a good path and we're coming to an agreement. It's not always bad, especially if you have a consulting lawyer that is familiar and friendly with the divorce and mediation process. So, cooperative divorce, what is this? So if you and your spouse, you can get your spouse on board to start with you right at the beginning and work together, then this is going to be a great option. Some of our customers start with their own plan, like DIY Pro, just to get the ball rolling. And if they run into issues where they need help, they'll upgrade. However you want to do it is absolutely fine. But if you can get your spouse on board right from the beginning, you can join us for cooperative divorce. Our software is going to help both of you along the way, and you'll have 2 people from Hello Divorce on your team. One is an account coordinator who's going to help you with any questions that come up along the way as you're filling out those questionnaires, who's going to make sure that they're starting that waiting period, that they're filing the forms at the right time, who's going to send you a document for e-signature so that you don't have to think about it, and just be your general point person should any issues come up outside of the real substance of the divorce. Then you will have your mediator. So all of our mediators are really really well trained in conflict resolution. Some are lawyer mediators. Some are more focused on financials, although all of them are very good at that. A couple of them are not lawyers at all. They have been trained in conflict resolution, especially in high conflict cases. And they will help you, that mediator will help the 2 of you come to an agreement. Sometimes in a setting like this on Zoom where you both are in the meeting, and sometimes, especially if you prefer, that mediator will talk to you each directly and sort of shuffle back and forth to broker an agreement. We also will provide resources to help you plan between sessions if you are a planner. So we're not going to inundate you with everything right away. It'll get lost. It'll feel like noise. But what we do want to make sure we do is that we provide you with exactly what you need when you need it. So as an example, let's say you're working towards a co-parenting, a parenting agreement, And you have a general sense of what schedule might work, but you're not sure. You want to know more details. You want to think about everything from, who's going to take the trips to the dentist, how you'll decide on whether your kids go to public or private school. We have a worksheet for you that's going to help you think through all of these issues. You can share it with your spouse ahead of time to be more convenient and efficient, or you can just have it in front of you for your mediation session. And that can be really, really helpful to making sure that you don't miss anything along the way. So how do you know if mediation is a good fit for you? Well, first of all, I think there is a lot of amazing celebrities that have showed us what a conscious uncoupling is, starting with Gwyneth Paltrow, for those of you that remember back in 2015, but other couples that have done a really good job at showing us that you can separate without it being a devastating thing on the family, or reorganizing the family in a way that feels healthy and good to you. We don't know what went on behind the scenes. And I have a very strong suspicion, as I am assuming you would too, that there was a lot of conflict, because that happens. Mediation is grueling to a certain extent. It is not easy to unwind a relationship that has gone on in some cases for years and years and years. So I don't want to paint this picture that this is going to be easy peasy, that everything is going to be happy. However, I do want you to know that if you have conflict, if the two of you struggle, if there's a lot of emotional triggers, that a mediator can not only help you to get to an agreement on almost everything or everything, but a mediator can also help you to improve your relationship and your communication techniques going forward. Because for those of you who do have children, you're going to be dealing and talking to your spouse for a very long time after this divorce. And anything that you can do to improve on your communication techniques is going to be helpful. I promise. I've seen it over and over and over again. There's been a question about whether or not mediation is for me if a spouse is a narcissist or has like a major personality disorder. And here's what I'll tell you. First of all, your mediator, if not through us, if you're choosing someone outside of us, must be trained in dealing with people with complex personalities and mental health issues. Also, I have seen hundreds and hundreds of mediations be successful when one spouse is problematic, I should say. Now, the only time it wouldn't work or wouldn't be a good idea for you to do mediation is if you feel that your spouse is not going to, in any way, shape, or form, be open about finances. And in that case, that's going to be really challenging. You cannot effectively do mediation unless you see what your spouse has, what their cards are. I'm also going to give you tips if you're mediating with a narcissist later on in this webinar. So stay tuned and I'll get to that. You are allowed to have emotions. This is an emotional process. So I don't want you to think that, a lot of times we hear, your lawyer is not your therapist. You're paying by the hour. But in this case, like, part of mediation is working through these emotions. And a lot of it is about self-care when you're not in these mediation sessions. So if you're having a particularly bad, terrible, no good day, it's okay to reschedule. We want to keep you on track as much as possible so that you both feel like you are moving forward. But pace is really important too, to go at a pace that you feel comfortable with. And you also want to make sure that the mediator feels like a right fit for both of you. So many of you already know that we do a free 15-minute call on the Hello Divorce website that you can sign up for. And that is to learn a little bit about you, to share with you our offerings, and you can then decide if one of them is a good fit for you and or your spouse. But we also go so far as to say, if you want to spend 15 minutes in addition to that call with one of our mediators to just say hello, check in, all of that good stuff, see if it feels like a good fit, trust your gut, we can do that too. And to see some of our mediator bios, you can go to the cooperative divorce product on our website. I'm sure Heather's going to link that any minute. And you can click directly on the bios for some of our mediators to get a good sense for the type of people that we have hired, that we've vetted, that we trust, that have had a really wonderful success rate helping people move through mediation. There's a question, and it's a really good one, about what if we both decide we don't want the other's money? Is that possible? Or does it have to be split? It is absolutely possible. You can come to whatever agreement you want that feels fair and reasonable. How you write up that agreement, though, is especially important, because if the court feels like you are making a decision that's maybe counter to one or both of your needs or your financial best interest, they might reject that divorce agreement and throw it back on you, ask you to revise it, or come to court. So we are very aware that our customers often have very creative agreements. Sometimes it's not as simple as you each take your own. When that's the case, that's wonderful. But in some cases, but sometimes it's just much more creative. Like, instead of selling the house and splitting the proceeds, or one person buying the other person out of the house, sometimes our customers will say, we want to keep the house until our youngest graduates high school, then we'll sell it. So all of that is possible. I don't want you to worry about the agreement and whether it will get through with the court. That's our job. That's our technology's job. What you need to be concerned with is what it is that you need and what it is that you want. So needs are going to be those non-negotiables. Wants are going to be those things with, like, I'd really like this. I'm going to try to do the best I can. But if I don't get all of them, I will survive. I won't look back in 5 years and say, oh, why didn't I do that? So our goal for you in developing Hello Divorce, and pretty much all of our products and software and services, is to help you be as efficient as possible, for us to manage the divorce for you so that you aren't having that on your shoulders every day to think about, and that you don't have to, unless you want to, deal with the court or have difficult conversations with your spouse without us helping to guide you through. So this is my favorite part. I love helping people with tips for successful mediation. I think in part because I've mediated for over 15 years, so I've really seen it all. But also because I love a good action plan. I love practical tips. I hate when, especially lawyers, and I'm one, and at one point I was guilty of it, but especially lawyers can oftentimes hide the ball on the information that they're giving you. Instead, they'll say, hey, here is the issue, and if you hire me, I'll fix it. As opposed to, here are the tools I can give you to help you solve your own issues. Or help you understand when you may or may not need a lawyer. So we really want you to commit to being a good listener. It's going to be really hard. There are going to be a lot of emotional triggers. The communication issues that you had during marriage don't go away, as you know, in divorce. In fact, in a lot of ways, they're amplified because we're scared. Whether we admit it or not, we're scared about what the outcome of this divorce is going to be. So what I want you to do is take a lot of deep breaths. Again, pace yourself and commit to being a good listener. I want you to have an open mind. Just as you're listening, have an open mind, but have limits. Again, you're really going to want to think through your wants and your needs. And you can do that on your own. You can do that after or on a run. You can do that with a therapist, with a legal coach. You can do it with a certified divorce financial analyst. But it's going to be really important that you think through this stuff. Another great reason to download our Divorce 101 guide, because it's going to get you thinking about this stuff. I want you to prepare with your best and worst case scenarios. So this isn't for everyone, but if you have a super, super complicated divorce where you're, or it feels complicated to you, I should say, where maybe both spouses have their own businesses, income tends to fluctuate a lot, you have a bunch of kids, you're probably going to want to know and work through, and you can ask your mediator directly or work with someone separately on what's the best and worst case scenario when it comes to spousal support, for example. What will I have to pay? What won't I have to pay? Again, we don't need to do it exactly what the law says, but it's important to understand what the parameters are. What are the different factors that we're going to consider to set support? So through all of this, you want to remember this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It is not going to happen overnight. It is okay. We are told this all the time. It is okay to compartmentalize some of this stuff, to say, I am going to do my best. On Wednesday evening, I'm going to sit down with a glass of wine or some tea and start working through this worksheets or using their questionnaires. But then to say to yourself, all right, now I'm going to put that over here and I'm going to focus on other stuff. That's okay. That is a method of survival. And it's a method of still being able to access some joy, even in what can feel like a really challenging time. And then finally, transparency is super key. And your mediator will remind you of that over and over again. Just because you disclose the $10,000 or $2,000 or $100 bonus that you received today doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to go half to your spouse. But if you don't disclose, then A, you likely won't make it through mediation. And B, when you go to court down the road, if the court were to find out that you failed to disclose, that you failed to share this information that's required by law, it can be really problematic for you. And we just don't want that. So sometimes it feels like, how in the heck am I ever going to be able to get my spouse on board with mediation? I can assure you that over 90% of the customers that we have worked with over the last couple of years have felt that way too at one time or another, but somehow they've been able to do it. So what I'm giving you here are tips that I learned myself, but mainly just by listening and working with other customers along the journey. So the first thing is see if you can set some ground rules. I know it's challenging. But if you can, once you get it out to your spouse, hey, like, I want a divorce. This is what I need to move forward. If you can get on the same ground, on the same page about one thing, what are we going to do to try to keep the cost and the conflict down? Then you're leagues ahead of where you were a day before, a month before, a year before, or whenever you first started considering divorce, which might have been 3, 4, 5 years ago. So if you can say to your spouse, look, I don't know exactly what this is going to look like. This is my first time too. And I don't know yet how we're going to come to an agreement. But one thing I do know is that I don't want to lawyer up. I don't want to go to court. And I do want to see if we can work together to come to an agreement that feels fair. If you can get your spouse on board with that, then literally any of the products or services that we offer will likely be a good fit for you. If your spouse is stubborn or a delayer, then what you might want to do, you or someone that you know and love, is emphasize what the benefits are of mediation. So you're going to save money, lots. You can type into Google USA Today, divorce lawyer fees, and you will see that the average cost of divorce is a across the country is over $10,000 per person. In California, if you have children, it's $26,000. New York, very similar. Colorado, something like $23,000 per person. So there's no doubt that with our flat fee for both of you, that includes both of you, of $4,500, or choosing a product and service that's $2,500 or $1,000, because we have all those different categories depending on what it is that you need, is going to be a lot less expensive than lawyering up. You will certainly save time, because our goal is to make this as efficient as possible. And you can, if you want, especially towards the beginning, meet separately with the mediator. It's likely going to take you a little bit more time, but a lot of our clients have chosen to do it this way, and it's a great way to come to an agreement without having to be in the same Zoom room. We can customize to your needs. We can control the pace. We have a very streamlined process. That doesn't mean there aren't periods of time that are like hurry up and wait, because that's just the process itself. But we're always working on moving you forward. There's a lot more privacy. So most courts throughout the country in divorce are open courts, and everything is public record. So that means if you have an argument about who might be with you, your child on Wednesdays, or who is going to take the Visa credit card debt, that can be an open court and through open record. We don't want that. We want to make this as private as possible. We can help you to resolve conflict. It is the goal is a win-win, not a zero-sum game for both of you to have what you need. And then also just more customized to your needs. If it turns out that you have a really complicated issue around valuing, let's say, an interest in a business or in a, stock plan, then we can help coordinate getting that valuation done. So like everything is in this one box that I'm talking about, as opposed to you having to go to a lawyer for this, and a therapist for this, and a paralegal to do your forms, and all the other stuff. I don't know about you, but I prefer it to be in a box that I feel like I can manage. The cooperative divorce comes with 5 hours at the start. Your mediator will let you know once they learn a little bit about you and see some of the issues and your goals for mediation. They'll be able to tell you whether or not they expect it will go longer than 5 hours. So that can help you. Not only can it help sort of move you to an agreement quicker, but also give you a sense of what we're looking at in terms of time frame. If you need more than 5 hours, you can absolutely purchase a la carte mediation time separately on an hourly basis at $300 an hour. So there are some resources on our site about how to tell your spouse you want a divorce. I think that we all struggle with this, that it's really hard and really scary, even when you have been struggling in relationship for a month, a year, 2 years, 10 years. But I've learned but one of the strategies that you can employ is to ask something about, or to tell your spouse something like, I've learned that there are ways to stay out of court and save money. While I want us both to have the support we need, I also don't want us lawyering up and going through this long, drawn out, often awful court battle. So kind of similar to what I was saying earlier, if you can establish ground rules, even if it's not at the beginning, but pretty early into the process, the better. And a reminder that lawyers are trained to win at all costs. That was my goal when I was practicing law. So even when I was, and that's how we establish our value, right? People hire us to win. So even well-intentioned lawyers, that those of us who liked to negotiate, who liked to keep things out of the court, the issue is if the other lawyer doesn't share that same sentiment, that other lawyers' goals or ego are more important than what their clients are, then we end up caught in the system. And since COVID, it has become more complicated and more time consuming, not less. So that could mean that you have an issue that needs resolved. And if the court doesn't deem it to be an absolute emergency, it could be 3, 6, 9 months before you even get into the court to resolve that one issue, which is problematic on so many levels that I don't think I even need to get into right now. If your spouse is a narcissist, or you think that your spouse is a narcissist, I really want you to think through self-care. That's going to be absolutely key. I want you to think about having the documents that you need. So if you suspect or think that there is a account, or there was at one time a retirement account that your spouse may have said no longer exists, it is reasonable to say, okay, that's fine. I just want to see that document. I want to know that the 401k that you had at your last job, that we rolled it over into another account, or that we spent it on the down payment of the house, or whatever it might be. And a good strategy to do that is to remind yourself that that this is reasonable, that the judge would want you to have access to this, and that it is about you, not making it about them. The other thing is, and this is really tricky, but what I find a strategy that often works really well is to, where possible, tell your spouse, as much as you have to swallow your pride on this, hey, that's a really good idea, or I think we can come to an agreement, or what you have to say is I'm hearing you. Sometimes it means giving up something so that you can get something else that feels more important to you. So swallowing your pride sometimes. Having a clear strategy is very important. That strategy might change, but knowing, hey, we're going into this session to tackle this issue. So if you don't know what the next mediation session is about, and you are worried that your spouse is going to gaslight or do something to sort of change it into what they want and need, then it's a really good idea to ask the mediator ahead of time for an agenda for that next session. I also recommend going to our blog. We had some Rebecca Zung, who is absolutely extraordinary and a specialist in negotiating with narcissists. She has written a blog, and she also has a wonderful YouTube channel. And I also recommend reading the book Splitting. There are a lot of ways to help you through, even when your spouse is a narcissist. Just don't be too concerned if it looks like the mediator is empathizing with your ex, because that's just a normal thing, a normal technique that mediators use to help both parties feel heard. So one other question that I think I missed earlier, and that is pets, right? What do we do about the pets? So in some states, pets are considered property, I know, and other states, pets are considered to be more like children. You can have a visitation schedule. You can have orders around who pays for what, whether or not you get pet insurance, whether the pets follow the kids to, if you're co-parenting. The bottom line is this: you can come to an agreement on whatever it is you want to agree on. But if you don't have an agreement, then there are generally default laws in your state around what and how pets are treated. I can tell you that I can't think of one judge, and I have appeared before many in my lifetime, who likes to make decisions around pets. They absolutely do not. It makes them so uncomfortable, and they know how emotionally charged and challenging it can be. So to the extent that you can keep that out of court, the better. I know that that's not always possible, but that would be my recommendation. Now, when things get complicated, we might need to bring in the big guns, as my daughter would say. And I wouldn't jump to hiring a bunch of people, because again, it might not be necessary, but these are just a few of the types of people that we either have in-house or contract with directly to bring to you. A certified divorce financial analyst, these people are amazing. Lawyers don't go to law school because they're good at math, right? That's not why we go to law school. So when there are very complicated financial issues, it's always a great idea to bring in a certified divorce financial analyst who can help us with one or two particularly sticky or tricky issues. We do have access to legal coaches if you want personalized legal advice or support in negotiation, or a coach who can review your paperwork before you sign it. We know some great co-parenting counselors if you guys are just not aligning on how to co-parent and you'll need some help outside or after the divorce is finalized. And then sometimes we even bring in a private judge where possible to speed up the signing and the filing of your documents if you feel like you are on a timeline for whatever reason, taxes or otherwise. So another question that we had is, what's the difference between a divorce and a formal separation? Why would someone just get a separation and not a divorce? Okay, so in the past, a lot of people chose legal separation for a couple reasons. And again, this sort of varies state to state, but I can give you a general sense of why people did this. One was to stay on their spouse's insurance plan, because once you're divorced, if you're on your spouse's health insurance plan through their employer, then you will likely need to get your own plan unless there's a legal separation versus a divorce. The problem with that is that you have to check with the HR, with the health insurance plan directly or through the HR department at you or your spouse's employment, because a lot of health insurance plans no longer will insure you, even if you received a legal separation versus a divorce. The other reason why some people choose legal separation versus divorce is because of Social Security. So you are likely, there are some exceptions, but are likely entitled to a portion of your spouse's Social Security benefits if you've been married for 10 years or longer. It's not 10 years from when you file divorce, it's from when you got married until when that final divorce decree comes in and is signed and filed by the court. Some people wanted to try to keep that open, because the great thing about Social Security is if you are receiving a portion of your spouse's benefits, it's not really a portion, it's an amount equal to half of their benefits, but they still get theirs. So they won't see you like taking a portion of their benefits. And then I don't want you to confuse legal separation with separation. In a lot of states, just by the mere fact of filing for a divorce, you are now considered separated. So we touched on it briefly, but we're getting towards the end. So I have a promo code for you, but I also am here to answer a few more questions as they come up. So if you're thinking of them, go ahead and chat them to me directly or through Q&A. A lot of you had asked, can I still have a lawyer? And the answer is absolutely. If you want a lawyer to check in with, to talk about negotiation, to run through different scenarios for settlement, you can. But you want a lawyer, a legal coach, somebody who's going to give you legal advice, who is familiar and comfortable and supportive of the mediation process. Otherwise, it can flat out destroy mediation. The other thing that I want you to know is that we have now processed thousands of divorces through my firm, starting in 2009, all the way through the launch of Hello Divorce in 2018, and now to today. And what we have learned is that divorce doesn't have to be messy and expensive. It can be hard. There can be conflict, but we can help you get to an agreement. You don't have to completely fear the divorce process, because unless there is an emergency, you are not going to have to run to court or make a decision or advocate for yourself at all, or at least not in this moment. So you will have time to think things through. And the last thing that I know to be true is that the more informed you are, the more you understand how this is going to work. You can't control for all variables, but the more that you can think through the type of divorce that you want to have, the better you will feel. So if you are thinking about signing up for Hello Divorce, or you are thinking about upgrading your plan so that you can take advantage of our mediation program, we are offering for the rest of this month a promo code DEC for December, DEC100. You will use that at checkout process, and you can use it for any service DIY Pro or above. So any service that includes one of our awesome humans, our smart or mediators, or account coordinators, any service that you're choosing where you want the great technology, but you also want some like help along the way, you can use this promotional code for. So we covered a lot in this hour, but I promise you we will send you the recording. We will also send you the slides so you can click on some of these links. And you will have an opportunity to go back and review it. If you feel like you might have missed something or you have additional questions, you are absolutely able to connect with us. Our email, our email address is right on the site, right on the slide. You can also chat us through the website. You can find us on social media. Everyone on this team is customer first, so dedicated to providing you with the exact information and resources that you need. And I'm so sorry, I didn't explain what that discount code is for, but yes, it's for $100 off. So, and for clarity's sake, for the Divorce Plus, Divorce with Benefits, and Cooperative Divorce, buying one plan covers you both. For the DIY Pro, it really depends on what state you are in, whether or not your spouse needs to also purchase a product. It will be less expensive if they do, but that might come up. I can't just go through all the different variations here, but it really depends on whether or not your state or county requires your spouse to also disclose finances. And in that case, your spouse will need access to the software too. But you don't need to worry about that. You'll get started as you work through it. If your account coordinator says that we need to get your spouse involved, then you will know it. And the account coordinator can reach out directly to your spouse if that is a good option or something that the two of you want. So let's see. Any other questions while you have me? I am here for another couple minutes. If you have any other questions, please chat them or put them in the Q&A. While you think about that, I'm just going to scroll back and make sure I didn't miss anything. Thank you, Heather, for jumping in and providing so much good information. Okay, so do we work with forensic accountants? So we do. We work with forensic accountants if you need them. Oftentimes you might need one to look through lots and lots of financial records to determine how money was spent. If you're concerned that you or your spouse maybe spent it on like somebody else, having an affair, or like spent it on gave a bunch of money to a family member that you didn't approve, whatever it might be. Sometimes a forensic accountant is used to trace back those finances to see how much of it belonged jointly to you. But for the most part, we tend to work with certified divorce financial analysts who are oftentimes also forensic accountants, because they can do the same or similar work, and they are very efficient at what they do, at least the ones that we work with. And they can help with valuing, appraising, dividing, equalizing, determining what is the best solution to maximize the money in each of your pockets while still avoiding like unnecessary tax issues, that kind of thing. So the financial disclosures vary from spouse to spouse. In the state to state. In the questionnaire, you will be asked questions like how much money is in a certain bank account, whether or not you have any retirement accounts, and if so, approximately how much money is there. You're also required in some states to provide that information directly to your spouse. So if you complete the questionnaire and you say you have $1,000 in your bank account, and then you're expected to provide that statement to your spouse as well, that illustrates that. In some cases, the two of you might have access like online logins or a joint account, and that makes it really a lot easier. But generally, when you get to step 2, that's likely going to be required. Again, it varies state to state, sometimes county to county. So I'll take one last question. If you have trust for kids and a prenup, what's the best route to go through? I generally find that if you have a prenup, if you are willing to talk about really challenging stuff even before you got married, then mediation is really a good option to go through because you're likely good candidates for it. And prenups, while it might not be completely clear because what you anticipated before marriage might have changed in the last 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 plus years, depending on how long you've been married, but at least it has some guidelines for how things will be divided, sometimes how support will even be calculated. So if the prenup is super straightforward, you get this, I get that, then you might not even need mediation. You might be able to use DIY Pro if you don't mind doing some of the work yourself and managing your divorce, or like Divorce Plus or above. But if you think you're going to need some help sort of, like figuring out exactly interpreting what the prenuptial agreement says, and now how are you going to craft an agreement that corresponds with that, then cooperative divorce, that's our mediation program, would be the best for you. All right. So that's all I have time for today. Again, I am so grateful for your time, and I hope this was helpful. You will receive the recording soon. And again, if you have any further questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us. That's it. Have a great rest of your day.